Well, good evening, Manchester, and a couple of our adjoining towns. It's the Progress Report because it's Wednesday at 7. That's a regular occurrence, except last week when none of the programs were produced. And because it's the first Wednesday of the month, I'm joined by my good friend and distinguished public servant, the great American himself, Lou D'Alessandro. And, we'll be back with Mike Farley next week. But it's really interesting that we have tonight a program to talk about what is probably the greatest public health epidemic we've seen in the state of New Hampshire, maybe in the country as a whole, maybe in Manchester in memory, and that's the opioid crisis. And it's just very interesting that we're talking about this as we come into the first program of the new year, 2017. And we have two outstanding guests to help us understand this and the good that is being done to help address this problem. We have our fire chief, Dan Goonan. Thanks for coming in, Dan. It's really great. And fresh from appearance on that lesser TV station, Channel 9, Chris Hickey, the chief of emergency services for Manchester Fire. And, we have this horrendous problem, and to me, it was extraordinary is that we were out in what serves as our green room right next to down the hall here. Who should be there but a young man who appeared to be, and in fact appeared to be in somewhat he obviously in distress. Thank you. That's the word I was searching for. Who reported that he indeed was a user and that he'd had Narcan administered to bring him back from the brink of death 4 times in this city. Chris tells me that one of those times he was the savior. So when we talk about the fact that this epidemic is everywhere, by God, Lou, there's the proof. We schedule this program and we come up and prepare to do this program, and there is somebody who's in need of services and receiving services at this very time. So could not be more timely. But we want to know where we're going. I told Chris as we were coming in, I think the rarest thing in the world is a brand new idea. And as far as I can tell, Chris, you've had a brand new idea that's now really taking off and really making a difference, and that is the Safe Station program. So why don't you tell us about how you came to have this idea and how you implemented it and where it's going and what the results are so far. I mean, that's a lot, but there's a lot to talk about.
That's okay. I can handle it, I think. So we had back in April, we had a gentleman come in who was a relative of one of the guys on the fire department. Was struggling with heroin addiction, and what he had done was he had put a message out on Facebook that some family saw, and they said, before you do anything, go and talk to your brother. So he did, and what we had at the time was some informational cards that we would leave as the fire department and AMR with families, which would connect them with basically any type of services they might need, whether it's dialing a phone to get a hold of a recovery coach or getting a hold of the different services going on the internet. Well, we'd never really used them before, and we found out that they really weren't all they were cracked up to be. At the time, I was doing some training with Hope for New Hampshire Recovery, and I called them up and I said, hey, I've got this kid, and here's the deal. I don't know what the intake process is like. And they said, well, just bring him in. So I did. That night, I wrote an email to my then Chief Burkish and Chief Goonan, basically laying out what had happened, because it was an unusual occurrence that, I pile someone into my car and take them on a tour of the city. And the then assistant chief and now chief forwarded that email to Mayor Gatzis. And one specific part of it was just one line in about a 5-paragraph, thing, and it said, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if we could do something like this is similar to Baby Safe Haven for people who were looking for help with substance abuse." The mayor pulled me into his office the following week and said, "Do you really think you could make this work?" I said, "Well, probably." He said, "Well, how long do you think it's going to take?" I said, 6-12 months. There's a lot of process and stuff I have to go through. He said, "Good, you got 3 weeks." So 2 weeks later, just to throw pie in his eye, we had the program developed and approved by the state, and all the necessary I's were dotted and T's were crossed and signatures were had, and we rolled the program out May 4th.
Well, you know, when you think of firefighters, you think of people that are trained to save people's lives, and that's a regular part of the business. But the usual image is, you know, going up on a ladder and bringing somebody out of a burning building.
Yeah.
This is a different thing. Did this require some? Did this require some training, and what kind of preparation did it take to actually launch this thing?
Well, you know, it wasn't, I don't think it was a whole lot of training, and I think in some ways that was good. We kind of handle this as a medical walk-in, you know, so and you know, we had a lot of discussion back and forth, like, said, hey, look, we'd rather have them come to us than us go to them, so why don't we open our doors, get them in here, and we'll see if we can connect them with service. So, and you know, in the fire service, we're used to responding to crisis situations in kind of an emergency situation, and I'll tell you, this whole thing hit early 2015, late 2014, and it hit us. We went from 20 overdoses to 70-something
20
overdoses.
or 30 a month
Wow.
on average to December of 14 when we had 73.
So we all sat there knowing we had a crisis and knowing we had an issue and not really knowing what to do with it. And, you know, we kind of met with the police department and health department and tried to, you know, figure out what we were going to do. We started to hand out cards when we went to overdoses. Maybe that would help, but we were pretty, you know, kind of frustrated. And the biggest frustration, I think, to us as a service is not responding. So when the mayor gave us that time frame, I think it was good because we responded like we normally respond. We jumped in with both feet. We started the ball rolling, and it hasn't been. It's been. I think it's been a resounding success through the last 8-9 months to reach this 7 months.
Yeah.
To reach this milestone, but you know, it's you know, we've tweaked it, we've changed it, but all in that time frame, we've been just helping people, and you know, quite frankly, I'm sure we saved many lives, and
You just got one right now.
we get pages when the walk-ins come in, so that is number
Wow.
1007.
So it's 1007
Right.
now. Yeah.
Wow. So this is available at all our fire stations in the city. Take the downtown, the central fire station. How many, on a typical day, how many people walk in and say, I need help?
On average, it's 5 or 6 a day.
Really?
You know, just in, I mean, I gave you guys some information there, but, you know, just to put it in perspective, you know, since May 4th, we've had, well, as of right now, 1,007 visits through Safe Station. 817 have gone through Central. So our guys at Central, the Engine 11, Truck 1, Rescue 1, they are spot on. It's a very fluid process for them. But every station has been represented. Every station has had people come in. The least amount is 8, and that's our 3 most outlying stations of 8, 9, and 4.
And as you can see, we've got them from, you know, every state in New England, you know, other
yeah.
states throughout the country.
Yeah,
We've had people
103 different communities just here in New Hampshire.
Well, I think it's an indication of the pervasive nature of the problem, and it's startling to me, our inability, you know, as a society to deal with this.
Yeah.
Because programs like yours are handling people who are already infected. Let's call it infected with the problem. Our job, I think, is to address why is this happening. You know, what's the root cause of this problem? And I've met with law enforcement from all over the country, DEA and state police and police from Massachusetts, et cetera. And there's an economic factor here that I think's never been considered. You know, usually you talk about drug use, it's to get high, to do this and to do that. But there's a tremendous business here that's going on. Tremendous business. And look at the money that's confiscated when they make a bust. And I think we had a conversation about Safe House, and we ought to talk about that as this thing moves on. But in my conversations with police officers, it's a business, and these salesmen are creating other salesmen, and who are creating other salesmen, and the price of the product rises as it moves north in our state. And I never was fully aware of the magnitude of this problem until I met with the police chief from Laconia, and this was some time ago. Everyone thinks of Laconia as a very peaceful city. You know, they think of the lake and the boats and this and that. But his problem, or their problem, is extremely, extremely severe. And how to get there? I mean, that's the question that I keep asking. How did it get there? I mean, what is the agent that keeps this thing going? And we always talk about when you reduce life to the lowest common denominator, it becomes an economic issue. It's all about money. And it seems to me that that's something that we got to get at. We as a society have to address it. You're saving lives. This kid that we saw just a few minutes ago has been brought back to life 4 times. 4 times he's been brought back to life. An incredible situation when you think of it. You know, life is so precious, and we deem it as so precious. But what's going on here? What's the mentality? Why
One
is
of the
this
things
happening?
that I always talked about when I would do the highly controversial school program was that this is, you know, the opioid situation as a whole was a perfect storm of a couple of different factors. You had people who were dependent upon pain medication because the manufacturers, much like the original issues with cigarettes, saying that nicotine wasn't addictive. Well, these medications aren't addictive, they're going to help your pain.
Right.
So there was no problem with prescribing them, and that's no fault of any of the doctors and PAs that would do that. But then you had the first thing that was always taken out of every budget and always looked at as a surplus thing was your substance abuse and mental health counseling funds.
Right.
So now all these places started to dry up and they didn't have any place to turn. Well, then you had a very savvy, very business-oriented drug cartel that sat and looked and watched different places around the country as far as who had a dependence, who was in most need, and who had literally the least amount of services, and they started flooding the market with an alternative.
And
And
we
then
were
all
in
of a
that,
sudden
we were in that sweet spot for
Yeah,
that.
Right.
we were that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Well,
And it-
one of the many.
Right.
But
But it seems
our
like
country as a whole was a sweet spot.
Yes.
Right.
Sure.
In Manchester in particular, in New Hampshire in general, is really the hot spot per capita of this crisis that we're in throughout the country. And it's and we're involved with studies that the feds will come in and try to figure out just what the senator's saying is like why Manchester, why specifically this area code, why is it here? They're looking at the socioeconomic factors and why are we having such a huge problem here and it's not as bad in Portland, Maine, or Burlington, Vermont, because it's basically this the same makeup in demographics. So you have anthropologists come in here and trying to figure out what's going on. It's just everyone's trying to figure it out right now. We're here kind of holding the bag, responding to this and trying to figure it out in our little area. But I think Safe Station is part of just a piece, and Granite Hammer is another piece.
Yeah.
And then as we get so invested in responding to this crisis, we realize how many issues there are in the recovery community, and we're bringing in so many people into that recovery community, which is a great thing, but it's overwhelming their services, and then we're worrying about housing on the other end and what pressures we're putting on the medical system. So it's a huge, it's a lot of moving parts.
There are a lot of moving parts, and it becomes a very pervasive issue. But I'd like to address what you said, because I think that has a great deal of validity in this situation. The prescribing of pain medication. Nobody wants pain. Everybody wants instant gratification.
Yeah.
And the inability to deal with mental health. When we released, and I was in state government when we decided we were going to close the mental hospital, and when we were going to close Laconia State School, and we were going to create area agencies to deal with that.
Community-based care.
Community-based care.
Yep.
And that worked for a time. And then all of a sudden, the money dried up, and people forgot about funding it. You know how it works, because you see it in your business. But when the community or when the state made that decision, we opened the gates.
Yeah.
And prescription medications. I've looked at the number of scripts that are prescribed
Oh,
in this
it's
state.
it's
I mean,
startling. It is getting better, but
It is, but
it's alarming.
It's
Yeah.
beyond belief. It is beyond belief. And the thing that really startled me was, I talked to a very prominent person today in the legislature, and I'm not going to mention the name, but she was talking to me about her father. Her father had a back problem.
Mhm.
He got a script from his physician. He had unlimited recycles,
Refills,
refills. And here's an individual that you thought would have known better, a good portion, good place in the society, and yet that unlimited refills caused him to be an addict, and caused a series of problems. And as a society, we never seem to address these issues.
No.
And that's what bothers me the most. And Danny, I mean, you're a family guy. You've been here. Your family's been here for a long time. I've been in Manchester most of my life. Bob, you also. And I've seen what's happened to my neighborhood. That's heartbreaking to me.
Oh, it's terrible.
What's happened, and this young guy that we just saw. I mean, he physically he looked like a wreck.
Yeah.
I mean, his face was marred. He had bandages all over him and other marks. But
You're right. It ravages your body. I mean, we get people coming in, and you ask them what their, do you have any other medical conditions? And you'll have 21, 22-year-old kids with valve jobs already.
Heart valve replacements. Yeah.
I've just got out of the hospital. I was in there for 4 months because I had endocarditis. People don't, they'll tell you I had some sort of a heart thing. I'm like, well, how long were you there? 4 months, 5 months. I'm like, did you have endocarditis? Something like that. They don't, and they're back out in the streets.
Well, it's just an indication. 1,000 times people. I mean, some of them are multiple, I'm sure, but 1,000 times people have come to your station in stations in less than a year. We see this kid as we're walking in here tonight. I talked about a situation with Bob. I took a bus ride to Boston, and I was at South Station. I witnessed a guy dying. He was overdosing in the stall of a men's room in South Boston.
Yep, that's pretty common, unfortunately. Yeah.
And they brought him back, and he walks out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something wrong there. I mean, do we have a treatment modality? I met with you guys. We talked about another situation, and we reviewed all of the entities that are in place that are supposed to be dealing with this. And Hope for Recovery just had this big grand opening at Hoyt's, and they were going to be the provider of these services. I mean, are they in place? I mean, they have to work with you guys in order to get this thing moving in the right direction. But are we all working together, I guess is my question.
We actually just had a meeting at the headquarters before we came over here, and it was with different entities from not only the city but the community and the state on up. And if one of the things we ended with is that if we had tried to tackle this issue with everybody that's involved now in the same room a year ago, there would have been 60 different conversations. But now there's the one solitary conversation. Unfortunate to say, one of the bright spots of dealing with this situation and dealing with this epidemic is it has brought everybody from the community to the table to say, here's what I can do. How can we make it work? And that's been beneficial to us. When we started our program, we had started with Hope for New Hampshire Recovery, and they were fantastic. And I mean, it got to the point where with any sort of recovery service, we at the time had more or less overwhelmed them, not intentionally, but I think that the scope of what we were dealing with even took us by surprise. We figured we'd have a couple dozen people a month come in. We average now 150 people a month come in. But what it did was it had opened up our eyes to what other services were available, and because of the early success of this program, we literally had people, and still now have people and organizations coming to us saying, here's what we can do, how can we help you out? And Serenity Place, when Hope was going through their transition, moving from Central Street over to the Hoyt Building, they had asked us if we could start working Serenity Place into the mix as a gradual thing, and then have Serenity take over the front line, and Hope would have interaction on the back end when these people are done with their programs,
Right.
give them additional places to go to their meetings.
And that should be the more, and we were kind of, I tell you, when we first started this, we went in with both feet, and we were pretty naive as to.
Oh, we're very naive.
As to what.
This looks like a
recovery
great
was.
idea now.
Yeah.
It's not such a great
What-
idea in the
exactly
beginning.
what recovery was, what recovery is, what's the psyche of the addict, and I'll tell you one thing, I feel like this has been a crash course, and we've really learned a lot. But I think one of the things we've learned is that when we transitioned to the Serenity Place, it was more of a clinical. So we had people. So when they take somebody in, they look at them. There's a credentialed clinician that looks at them and diagnoses their issue, and it may not just be, someone might come in presenting with an opioid addiction, but he's also got schizophrenia or bipolar disease,
Right.
and so there's so many different multiple things going
Yeah,
on.
well, people come in all the time, and Chief is famous for saying this. Someone will come in, oh, what seems to be the problem? Trying to get off heroin. Oh, okay, well, what other kind of medical problems do you have? Well, I've got bipolar, I'm schizophrenic, I'm, personality disorder, I've got depression. I mean, we deal with not only the substance that they're trying to get help with, but then there's a whole bunch of things that as they start to decrease the need for these substances, they need a lot more care
Sure.
because there's other things that are now starting to become more prominent.
So if someone comes in and they start, in Serenity Place in their group therapy portion, at the same time, they have a caseworker, and they're working with them with the whole person. So they may be one day in group, the next day they're at Healthcare for the Homeless, or they're at Manchester Mental Health. So not only is Serenity Place doing their counseling, they're also doing transportation to all these services. And not just them, but CMC and Elliott Hospital,
right,
and
right.
it's really this whole thing is, like I said, it's just a lot of moving parts, and when you get so invested in this, you start worrying about those moving parts because our name's on this thing now.
Yeah,
this is our program. We want to make sure it's working.
Name and his face.
Sure.
Yeah.
We've got a caller. Hi there, Roger. You ready to join us on the progress report with a question or comment? You're on the air.
I love your show.
Oh, thank you.
Listen, I have a couple of questions here. I'm a senior citizen, been living in this city I'm 80 years old. And I have a feeling that we're being overloaded with these people that need the help and walking into the firehouses. I'm wondering how many of these people are not local citizens. How many of them are from out of town and even out of state? Could you help us with this, please? Thank you.
Yes, we can. We have some data right here. I'll let our guest talk about it. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, so Roger, and for anybody else who's interested, we've had over 1,000 people, 1,007 come in. Let's see, 300 and not counting the one that's right now, because I'm not sure where they're from. They're at Station 2 right now. Only 345 have been from Manchester. We have 103 other different communities in New Hampshire represented from as far north as you can get to as far south, east, and west. We have people from Maine, Massachusetts, Alabama, Connecticut, Arizona. One of the reasons why people are coming to us is, with the exception of the new programs that have started under the Safe Station name in other communities, we are the only game in town. And when I say in town, I mean the country. We're the only program like this that's run through a fire department with this ease of access that gets them connected to programs that's, people tell me it's been proven successful. we've kind of perfected the craft, and it's a fluid motion, a fluid movement. But everybody that comes through this program doesn't stay in the city.
Right.
If they need inpatient programs, well, then they're put into the inpatient programs that are in place throughout New England.
I think what you got to remember is, Manchester is pretty unique in the state where we have so many services here, and when you go to other parts of the state, they don't have those services. So oftentimes people will come in, and not just for not just for treatment for opioid addiction or addiction in general, but they'll come here just because they're generally ill, and if you're in Colebrook, New Hampshire, there's no services.
Yeah.
There's no. You can't take a taxi. You can't walk to the recovery center or the hospital or the grocery store. That's just just the nature of Manchester.
Sure.
And quite frankly, I don't consider us a catch basin, but I don't mind the people coming in from other parts of the state. I mean, we have this program; it's very successful. We
They're all human beings.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And
Everyone
I think with me, this is what the fire department does, and I think we have kind of a moral responsibility to all these people that's coming in. So we
absolutely.
we'll get them in. We'll give them a shot at treatment. And what's I think unique about our program is that if you come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, by 9:30 in the morning, you're in treatment. You're in group therapy. You're working with a caseworker, and they're trying to figure out where you're at with this,
Sure.
whether you have a safe place to go, whether you are truly homeless, or
So Dan, tell us a little bit about what, I know everybody's got an individual problem. They may have drugs they use that are commonly used, but everybody has individual problems. But what's a typical experience of somebody coming into your central station in an hour and a half before they go? What happens?
Well, it's not what I'm saying. An hour and a half. That's the intake process at Serenity Place. But
Okay.
with us, it's pretty simple. You're kind of, we greet you when you come to the door. They ring our doorbell. We got kind of a camera there, and they'll say, "I'm here for Safe Station." We'll send a company out, and
The word is out that this is safe station is available.
we don't have to do a lot of advertising. This is a lot of word of mouth and a couple,
Yeah.
TV spots, and man, the word gets out there, and people come from all over because people are truly desperate. I mean, there's not many people that come to our station or any of our stations that aren't really at that point in time they are seeking help. They've hit that spot. We were always told early in this program that you want to get them at that point where they are ready for treatment.
They've hit bottom.
That might be at 2 o'clock in the morning. That might be at 8 o'clock in the morning. So that's why we're here. Come in and we'll help you. So we'll do a set of vitals. We'll call AMR, who's our partner in this. They'll come in and do a secondary set of vitals if they need it. We'll make sure that they're healthy enough to get into some treatment or get to the respite. Make sure they don't have any underlying medical conditions, high blood pressure, a heart problem, because these people they're sick. They're physically sick. Some people have been using drugs for a decade before they come into treatment. It's not uncommon to say, people coming in saying, I've used meth every single day for the last 5 years, and it ravages a person. So oftentimes, basically if they're healthy enough to get in, we'll call a Serenity Place, and they'll come over with a clinician and do an intake. If they're too sick to get into that process, we'll call an ambulance. They'll be reevaluated and sent to the hospital. Once they're cleared physically, then someone from Serenity Place will pick them up from the hospital and get them into treatment.
So we've known this crisis is real serious, and I didn't realize it exploded as fast as you explained, Chris. I mean, that's just amazing. But we've certainly tried to work at the state level. Senator Lou certainly has been part of that. You were on the task force, weren't you?
Yes.
And we've tried to address it. Do we have the resources now that we need to? I mean, are we still shy of things? We have the Hope for Recovery at the Hoyts.
Yeah, we
Have
are
we done
still
what we
shy.
need, or is there still need?
There's
for more?
it's getting better. Even compared to just a year ago, the amount of resources and the level of those resources that they're able and service they're able to provide is a lot better than it was. However, this is the beginning. There's still a long way to go.
In terms of allocation of resources, through the state, $29 million has been allocated for treatment to a variety of entities, and most of that is federal money. That's gone through Health and Human Services, gone through the Governing Council, and there is some state money. House Bill 533 appropriated some state money, $2 million for housing, and that's where the Granite Hammer money came from. So I look at those contracts as often as I can to find out if they're moving, and if they're getting out to the right places, and if the money is being used appropriately. What I've found is the money's appropriated, but it's not moving out the door.
Right.
And I don't understand that, so I've tried to trace it and find out what's going on. A little tongue-tied there.
That's all right. I get segues.
And that's one of the things
It's all good.
we kind of met with today. We met with Jim Vera, the drug czar,
Right.
and some of the people in our community, and Granite United Way, and Tim Rourke.
Right.
So we wanted to kind of get on the same page,
Right.
because we really think this is I think the state's realizing this is a good program, and we want to kind of. We're hoping to recreate this package, because I think over the last 7 months that we understand,
Yeah, sure.
the kind of the needs, and we know that this is we're just an access point. But when these people get the Serenity Place and they get into treatment, and when they come to see us, 80% are truly homeless.
Right.
So what's going to happen when they get out of Farnham Center?
Yeah.
They're still homeless.
We appropriated $2 million in that bill for housing, for let's call it. We used to call it workplace housing, rather than, but low-income housing and affordable housing is a better nomenclature to put it in. So we've appropriated some money. Obviously, it's not enough, because the homeless situation has become pervasive in our community also, and as we walk down the streets, we see that. But I think it's essential that the entities get together and look at this money, and this money that has been appropriated. Mm-hmm. It's gone through Governing Council. These contracts have been awarded, but for some reason, the jobs haven't been done. And what do you think? What's the reason for that? Are we not coordinated? I mean, is it because we don't have the places to take the money? But it seems to me. I mean, I looked at it today, and I think of the 29 million, maybe 4 million has been spent, and all of that money is for the fiscal year 17. That our fiscal year 17 ends in June, so we're halfway through the fiscal year. The only program that has used all of the money that was appropriated is Granite Hammer. All of the money that was appropriated has gone out. The police departments, and basically that's overtime money for catching the culprits. But it's the second stage that's got to be done, and that's viable treatment options, so that these guys don't come back, or these people don't come back. And we've got to, I think, we've got to do better in that respect, and that's where this coordination, I think, comes in. And I've met a couple, as I say, I met with law enforcement, and I've met with you guys to try to find out what's really going on. So, I want to get to the ground floor, because that's kind of where it's at, and find out how we can how we the state, the legislature, how we can really assist in getting things done. Now, I found out, to my amazement, we have 8 methadone clinics in the state of New Hampshire. 8 methadone clinics. We have 2 in Manchester. These are for-profit entities. Many of the clients are Medicaid. They're getting $15 a day, and they're 7 days a week. So are they being properly taken care of? Do they do the screening? Do they meet with the doctor? And is it the ultimate goal to get them off the methadone? Because we're creating addicts if they stay on the methadone. And I think that's another problem that we have to deal with. And I say we, I mean us. I mean, we're citizens. And if this exacerbates, Danny, if you got 3,000 people who are in I would call creative
Yeah.
addiction. All right. Well, what if it goes to 4,000 or 5,000?
We see, one of the methadone clinics are right down the street
Yes.
from us and
Yeah.
right outside the front door of City Hall. So when we're down there, it certainly is a constant, string of people coming right through there. So it is kind of disturbing to know that it's kind of like, feels like you're almost treading water. Like, okay, you're kind of on something, but you're not on that thing,
Right.
you.
Oh,
So I don't know what the answer is, but it's,
methadone is a synthetic opioid. So it is
Swapping one drug for
right,
another, really, aren't
yeah,
you?
right. So it
Hopefully for some benefit.
hopefully. So it kind of is what it is. And I've had people come to my office complaining about it. I called Joe Harding at the Office of Alcohol, Drug Abuse at the Health and Human Services. They tell me that the program is doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he was one of the ones we met with today.
Yeah.
Just like I said, we want to get in the same page, and
Oh, yeah.
we understand that there's money coming in, and it's not
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
not to
there's-
manage the fire department is but
Yeah, we're
it-
certainly not standing there like this with our hands out. I mean,
right.
This is,
This is something that's
we're not looking for extra people. We're
it's
not looking for extra stations.
Right,
We're not looking for extra
Sure.
funds. We do it because this is what we do.
Well,
and this is
it's
what
the right
we
thing
should
to
be
do.
doing.
Sure.
Serving the community. So that's why we're so
Yeah.
anxious to do something and make a
mean,
change.
The safe station concept is it's creative in terms of dealing with a crisis.
Yeah,
So
certainly is.
it's a creative step. The question is, how do we support it going forward? That's with long-term care, effective treatment that allows people to at least get out and live decent lives. Because I'm told that, and you guys know a heck of a lot more about it than I do, but if you're an addict, you're an addict for the rest of your life. You got to work every day to stay clean.
Yeah, it's sometimes it is kind of a fragile thing sometimes, but we're seeing a lot of successes when you go to, and we're at Serenity Place every day, just kind of
Yeah.
checking on things because we're pushing so many people their way. But I'm seeing people that I know I processed through Safe Station myself months ago that are still in recovery, and kind of knock on wood that we're seeing some of those longer term successes.
Sure.
But on the other hand, I think we've learned that if you fall off and you come back through Safe Station, that's okay too, because we'll help you
Yeah, it
out
doesn't
again.
matter.
You do
if
have a lot of
you're-
repeaters, apparently.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have 760 plus unique people, individual
times, yeah.
first time that they've come through. We've had 244 repeat visits. Sometimes it's once, sometimes it's 5. To us on the line, the boots on the ground, it doesn't make a difference to us how many times you come in, because you're making that effort to try and right your own ship.
Right.
And I got to tell you, our guys have been extremely supportive.
Yeah.
Our local, our
Surprisingly, yeah.
firefighters, they're really supportive.
So there was no pushback when you rolled this
there's-
out. People were ready
No.
to go.
There's no pushback. There's still no pushback. They,
I mean, one of the side benefits of this program has actually been that it's mentally helped us on the line. I ran American Medical Response for 3 years here in the city. I worked for Rockingham for a long time before that. I've been working as a paramedic here in the city since 2001. You get to a point where you don't want to be going on overdoses anymore.
Right.
It becomes extremely
Sure.
tiring, extremely taxing.
Oh, sure.
And it was almost an immediate flip of mentality, because people were coming to us now before they had that situation.
That's a good point. An excellent
And it
point.
mentally helped us. I mean, do we still go on overdoses? Yep, absolutely. We still
Yeah.
go on 50 a month, but those numbers are starting to finally dwindle.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
a
So,
good
so here's the question I have every time we discuss this issue on the program, and we've done it before. And we've had you on, Chris, before with that dramatic video you created. I mean,
Yeah.
my partner didn't even think we should show it.
That's what we get from the school.
I
That's
said,
what
I said, the school people are seeing this. We could show
Yeah.
this on here.
Yeah.
But anybody that watched that and took drugs, I just don't understand it. It was
that was I thought that was a great program because it really shows you physically what happens.
it sure did.
And it's,
I mean, the whole point of it was it showed what we see from our perspective as first responders, whether it's fire, EMS, law enforcement, hospital. Because you can have all the experts in the world come in and talk to you about
Yeah.
it, but unless you have something to visually attach to it,
Right.
attached to what they're saying, I mean, were the photos disturbing?
Yes,
Yeah.
they were.
But
that
I
was-
can
that was the
guarantee you
intent.
almost every single one of those pictures, and I couldn't use the real people from calls that I've been on here in the city, every single one of those pictures were representative of what we do see and how it does affect you
Yeah.
and how it does completely and totally ruin and change your life.
Sure.
Well, that was certainly one of the most dramatic programs we've had. We had visual content that night for sure.
Yeah.
But you know, every time we do one of these shows, and my question is always, when is this wave going to crest? I mean, when's it going to start getting better? When are we going to see these numbers come down? Is that happening at all, or does more have to be done?
It is starting to happen. I'm not. I will never be one to say, "Oh, safe station. That is the absolute reason why." No, it's the community involvement. We've really opened the eyes of everybody in the community, from stakeholders to brand new people, to say, "Hey, we have a problem. We're trying to fix it. Any help you can give is great. Any sort of, expertise that you may have that you want to lend into things is fantastic." Do I think that it's crested and it's going to get better? Eventually.
Yeah.
But there's always something new on the market. Like, we've switched since we started even doing this program. When we first started seeing things, it was heroin. That was the big thing. And then it became heroin cut with fentanyl.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it flipped. It became fentanyl cut with heroin. Well, now it went to fentanyl. And now you have these fentanyl analogs, or these hybrid synthetic fentanyls that are coming onto the market from
And
other
each one more
countries.
powerful than the last?
Each
Is
one's
that what
more
you're saying?
powerful than the
Yeah, more
worst, than the
dangerous,
one
yeah.
before.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I was interested in this relatively young man we saw just outside here.
Yes,
Who went on
sir.
and said, "You can't get heroin anymore. It's all at least some fentanyl."
It's all some fentanyl. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the one that's really the most
That's
deadly.
it's driven by the demand. And that's that same young gentleman out there. He and I had a very brief conversation, and he started talking about one of the things that I've talked about for a couple of months now. One of the drugs that's out there that's not really talked about is this drug called Pink.
Yes.
Never heard of it.
Yeah,
What's it about?
Pink is it's a fentanyl analog, a fentanyl derivative. It comes from overseas, from the Asian market. It doesn't really have a name other than just pink, because that's the color. It's 8 times more powerful than heroin, so it puts it in that greater than heroin, not as bad as fentanyl. So now you have the mentality of, "Oh, I can use this and it's not going to be as bad."
Right.
The only problem is they don't tell you you have to use less of it in order to have just the 8 times as powerful, or you'll end up on the floor.
Wow.
I read an editorial in the Boston paper, I think it was last week, that said for the first time we're kind of waking up to the problem, that this is not just for low-income people.
Nope.
That this problem is throughout our entire society. People who live in grandiose homes, in very affluent areas, have as much of a problem as that person who's living in the inner city. It seems to me a society has to wake up to that fact in order to really deal with this crisis. People have to believe that it's everybody's problem, and that gives you the impetus
It seems to me
deal with it.
we're kind of turning that corner as far as that goes. I mean, we give a lot of talks out there to businesses, and we help.
We do.
We do a lot of essentially, kind of fundraising on that other end with with Patrick Tufts from Granite United Way. So we're happy to do it because we think this is a great program, and Granite United Way helps us out a lot. But when you're talking to somebody and you're putting on a 10 or 15-minute presentation or just talking, you can see the heads, because it's touching all these families. It's touching everybody. It's it's really it's hard to even find somebody who doesn't know somebody or somebody, a cousin, an uncle, an aunt. It's really terrible. It's we talked the other day in Cedar de Los Angeles, like, what's happening to our city, and and I'm looking out my window, And I'm like, what am I seeing now? Is this, what's happening to society? Am I watching this happen? You know,
Right.
this is, how do we stop it?
And that buzzer went off, and someone had come for safe station,
Yep,
safe
right,
station,
yep.
right? In the-
Right when you were there, yeah.
Yeah, right when we were there. Yeah, I asked that same question over and over again. You know, what's happened to our society, and I think mental health has become a very, very significant part of the equation.
Yep.
And you know, we've been sued, and the state has entered into a commitment to address this. And we have an overseer who looks at this and who reports back to the court as to whether or not we're addressing this situation.
This is how we really deal with problems in New
Yeah,
Hampshire. We
yeah,
wait till we get
that's
sued,
Yeah.
then we have to come up with some funds.
Well, at this point in time, we haven't really fulfilled our commitment. So we got to step on the gas and get that done. But mental health has become an extremely important part of this
No,
equation.
we know that very, very well. In fact, we met with Pat Cardy from Manchester Mental Health, and they have a response team. We're meeting, I think, on Friday to try to figure out how we can integrate that, because we do have a big portion. You know, it's got to be 50-60% of the people coming to Safe Station also have that underlying mental health issue, and it's, you know, it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the
Right,
egg. I
right.
mean, you know,
Yeah, but that just,
how did we get here?
just to chime in here, just because you have a mental health issue does not mean you're going
Correct.
to be a drug addict.
Right, sure.
Not everybody.
Right.
I have been very conscious
Right.
of saying things and not having to be taken out of turn. Not that
Right.
that's ever happened to me before, ever. You know,
But it's
I
very
always
obvious
say
for
that,
us.
you know, it doesn't matter. Opiates themselves, I mean, they're non-discriminatory.
Right.
Like you said, people need to understand that it affects all levels of
Right.
the community.
Right.
I would always say, you know, it doesn't matter if you live in a mansion on the hill or if you live in a tent down by the river. It doesn't matter your skin color, your racial background, your religious preference, good family, broken home, rich, poor.
Right.
It doesn't, age doesn't even play a difference. I
Right.
mean, the oldest person we've treated for an overdose was 89 years old. The oldest person that's come through Safe Station is 70. People have had a problem the whole time.
Right.
It's just a matter of, like I said earlier, those services were gradually dried up,
Right.
and then it became more prominent, and then it got flooded with the market, and here we are.
Right. And here we are.
Well, you know, they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and you must feel pretty good, Chris, about seeing this idea now. It's now gone beyond the city of Manchester, hasn't it?
It has, and it's flattering, but it's also overwhelming and humbling. You know, when I see my program description and you know, my words on Fire Department of New York letterhead as the proposal they sent in to their commissioners to start a pilot program in the Bronx.
Very good.
And it's-
The city of Boston contacted me over the weekend wanting to start something. We had a fire department in Maine contact me. We've had across the country, Massachusetts, Florida, California, Ohio, you know, departments of sitting in a very similar situation to us, kind of be in the same position we were at, just frustrated with how things in their eyes had been going in their own community and wanted to step up. And I mean, this plan is so simple that once you figure out what you have in your community available for resources, you can make it work. And every department, like we've helped, so Nashua's is run a little bit different than ours. Hooksit's getting ready to run one out that's a little bit different, but it's tuned to the way their community operates. Auburn runs one that is tuned to the way their community operates. It's more of a theory and a belief system than it is like a hardcore cookie cutter program.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
this
right.
is the way we run it is what works for us based on the resources we have.
And I think what really makes this thing different is because it's the fire department, it's not a police department, it's, you know, we're here to help. Historically, that's what you come into the firehouse for, whether it's to
Right.
change a tire or to, you check your baby seat.
Everybody
we're here to
wants a
help.
tour of the firehouse, no one wants a tour of the
Yeah.
police station.
And
No
we'll ask
offense
them,
to any
like,
officer out there. I got police in my family.
No cells in the fire department, right?
Well, I mean, you know, but I think that's a great point, though, because you listen, when you're a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a fireman.
Yep, since
Right.
I was 3 years old is what I
Right.
want to do.
I wanna
Not
be a-
necessarily this program, but
I want to be a fireman. And there's a sense of security and safety in that environment, and certainly a strong record of helping people, you know, saving lives. It's been part
There's some level
parcel
of comfort when they come
Yeah.
in, you know, they're not intimidated, and, you know, I mean, you're greeted with a handshake, and, you know, sit down, we'll help you. I mean, that's basically, and people are coming in going, you can see the relief, like, okay, I shouldn't be so intimidated, I can get help here, you know?
Oh, a welcoming environment is very important.
we had a conversation. I had a conversation with Chief Willard, who's been one of the most staunch supporters of this
Yeah.
program. The day we wrote it, the day we unveiled it, actually, he pulled me aside, and you know, we had a conversation of, you know, do you want to do this at the police station? Do you want it to be an access point? And he's like, you know what? I'll support it 100%, but we're going to stay in our lane. We don't want that. You know, you do what you're supposed to be doing. We'll stay in your lane. We'll stay in ours. We'll do the enforcement and
Right.
the apprehension. You do the intake and the treatment. We don't want the two to be confused because nobody will come to us.
And and I'll tell you, this has really brought us the police department and the fire department, I don't think has ever worked this, you know, hand in hand with something, you know,
Yeah.
we're doing, you know, we're doing drills with them, we're doing,
Sure.
you know, active shooter scenarios, we're
Right.
doing emergency management scenarios, so it's really, you know, I got to give all the credit to Chief Willard. He's been an excellent advocate with this, and he's been a great guy to work with, too.
Right. Certainly a strong proponent of the drug corps, which we're finally getting going. You know, another aspect of this problem is education, which, you know, I come back to your incredible video. Is there still, is there a relationship with the Manchester School District about,
Yeah, we were just talking about this.
Yeah.
Right.
What they've done, and I support them 100% with it, is, you know, they've kind of taken the groundwork that I put down, which I think was the intent of to open up the eyes of students and families to the situation that we have from, you know, the first responder experience, and they've now allocated and appropriated funds to increase it from a internal school procedure. So each school is now running a systematic program of education, starting with the addiction process all the way up through the treatment and recovery, and they're doing it in some pretty creative ways. So I've heard from Chief Goonan that students have come to him and said they're kind of upset that I'm not back in the schools again this year because I had a new program that was
I think for the
Fantastic.
most part enjoyed it, especially the high school kids. I mean, it
Yeah.
was really something to see. And
I'm not your typical speaker
Right.
in a school, so
oh, yeah?
yeah. Not
What do you do,
really.
put on a little show?
Oh well, sometimes language gets creative. There's some slip-ups, but I mean, I enjoy it. It certainly was, you know, to know that even if one kid heard my message when I was going into the schools,
Right.
that's all I needed to hear. And I would have students, it didn't matter whether it was schools from the North Country, schools in Massachusetts, or schools from here in the city. Students every time would come up to me afterwards and say, you know, I had a family member, my brother, my sister, my aunt, my uncle, my parents, or me myself struggle with addiction. And, you know, the fact that I opened their eyes to it made all the difference in the world to them. So
That's great.
Sure.
That's great. Well, it's wonderful you had this great idea, and then it's had such, you know, as I say, imitation, the
it
sincere
was a
form of
pretty
flattery.
bright idea, wasn't it?
Pretty good idea, and that you know you had support from the chief and
That's
everybody.
been the greatest part of it.
And you know, and now I guess you're getting some, I think, well-deserved recognition. You've been selected as the Citizen of the Year for the state of New Hampshire. Is that right?
Yeah, the union leader made me the 2016 Citizen of the Year.
Well, that's a
Yeah.
damn fine choice, I would say. sure many others that would be worthy, but this is a
Yeah,
really fine choice.
It's more something that, I wholeheartedly appreciate the award and the kind words that were said on my behalf by everybody that supported me through it, but it's more of a testament to the program that we put together as a city and as a community.
Yeah, which is certainly a team effort, with your idea.
I merely put ink on paper. That's what I say.
Well, that's really good. You think this? You traveling a lot now? I mean, you said your words are on the
Starting to,
letterhead of
yeah.
the Fire Department of New York City.
Yeah.
So you're probably in demand a lot of places, right?
It's starting to. It's more of the phone calls and emails right now,
Okay.
which I'm more than fine with.
Well, we hope
Because no matter where I go, he's going to have to come with me because he's going to think it's a vacation.
well, as long as you both stay in Manchester, that's what we
Yeah,
want, definitely.
I'm not going anywhere. No.
Good. Well, folks, I think we're about to the end of this week's progress report, and I want to thank you both for coming in. This has
Great
been a
job.
terrific
Anytime.
discussion.
Thank you for
And
having us.
congratulations on, Manchester, kind of the center of the storm in many ways, but maybe the center of the solution to the storm as well. So
We're trying to be. As you said, we're
that's
trying to be
great.
creative with ideas and
Well,
kind of
kudos-
see what sticks.
Kudos to the department, Danny,
Thank you.
and to all of the firefighters for their
Yeah.
They're doing a great
for their
job, they really are.
contribution. They do a great job for our city, and we're proud of them, and we're going to be even prouder when we solve this problem.
Okay.
Give it a shot.
Okay.
Yeah, trying our hardest.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be
Thank
back
you.
next week. Well, I'll be back with Mike Farley next week, and we'll have another edition of the Progress Report. So be with us at that time.